Good morning, and welcome to the technical session on landfill technologies and how to achieve behavioural change through innovative technologies. In this session, there will be 3 presentations, followed by a live Q&A. I'll introduce myself. My name is Mike Haworth. I'm an Assistant Director for Solid Waste for the Cayman Islands Government Department of Environmental Health. And first of all, I'd like to give a warm thank you for our conference sponsors. We really support we really appreciate the support of Sandpick Contracting, Dial Metering, Maya, Water Engineering and Pipeline Company, Consolidated Water Limited, Dart Enterprises, Florida Aquastore and Argo America. Right, before we start the session, however, just a little piece of housekeeping. All attendees are muted during the presentation. You can submit text questions anytime using the Woover Q&A section, and the Q&A will follow after all the presentations have been given. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce the first speaker. It's Miss Delena Indar. Delena is a current member of the CPEF Executive Council, as well as a Director of CPEF since 2014. She has a BSc in Environmental and Natural Resource Management, and an MSc in Occupational and Environmental Safety and Health, and is the holder of a Project Management Professional Certification. She is a research analyst and consultant with experience in natural sector reports. She is an advocate of sustainable development and worked in related thematic areas, as she was previously contracted to the Economic Commission for Latin America and Caribbean and Environmental Management Authority. Ms. Indar believes in continuous improvement of self and society and cohesive work environments for the betterment of all. Ms. Indar, it's now time for your presentation.
Hello everyone. My name is Delena Indar, and today I will be presenting to you on a paper by Delena Indar, Dimitri Ramlochan, Renaldo Lewis, and Yashoda on the efficacy of the compost tumbler as a tool in organic waste management in households in Trinidad and Tobago. To begin with, the first 3 authors are members of CPEF, so first let me give you some introductory information on the NGO. CPEF was legally registered in 2015 in Trinidad and Tobago as Central Pathfinders Environmental Foundation, the mission of which is to promote ecological conservation through sustainable environmental and agricultural awareness and development. The NGO is volunteer-based. In alignment with our mission and objectives, CPEF has participated in mangrove planting, capacity building sessions, educational booths, promotion of zero waste products, and also implemented an eco-info garden at a primary school. In collaboration with the New Fire Festival and GTB Homesteads, CPEF has also co-hosted composting workshops. Organic waste has been a strategic focus of CPEF. It was discovered that the improper disposal of organic waste is a core problem in Trinidad and Tobago, as there's a high volume of 27% of organic waste in our national landfills. According to a 2010 waste characterization study, almost 1/3 of the waste at the Beetham landfill comprises organics, and there's also a high percentage at the other landfills that were surveyed. This, of course, has many negative health and environmental impacts. According to stakeholders and other local articles and reports, the organic waste problem continues. Being the embodiment of where there is a problem, aim to find a solution, CPEF considered composting as a solution to the organic waste problem in Trinidad and Tobago, because incidentally the process uses various organic materials that are otherwise regarded as waste products. Moreover, the output, a good compost, is rich in plant nutrients and beneficial organisms. Compost is regarded as an organic stable soil amendment and improves soil structure, retains moisture, and buffers pH. There exist numerous benefits of composting organic waste as an alternative to sending it to the landfill. So for instance, from a national perspective, less finances would be required by the relevant authorities for waste management. And composting can also serve as a tool to assist with the establishment of a circular economy. Particularly from the landfill aspect, it should be noted that composting under anaerobic conditions in a landfill produces methane, a greenhouse gas. And so composting organic waste would reduce the greenhouse gas emissions of Trinidad and Tobago as well as increase landfill longevity. From a household, community, and individual perspective, composting can actually save a household money in that there'd be reduced need for fertilizers and would encourage home gardening because there would likely be healthier plants due to better soil structure and increased nutrients and beneficial soil microorganisms. Composting is the optimized process of biological degradation of organic materials under controlled and integrated key conditions to produce compost. So firstly, materials that are high in nitrogen, referred to as browns or brown materials, are required. And these include leaves, dried grasses, wood chips, and sawdust. Materials high in carbon, also necessary, and these include food scraps. Moisture is required at 40 to 60%, as is air at more than 10%. Now, it should be noted that not enough aeration and too wet conditions can produce foul odors because it is very likely that anaerobic composting may occur. The process also requires macro and microorganisms, which function best under pH ratings of 5.5 to 8 and temperature ratings of more than 40 degrees Celsius, going up to 70 degrees Celsius. Now, there are certain types of microorganisms that function best within certain ranges. So, for instance, there are particular types that function best between 60 to 70 degrees Celsius. Being cognizant that not all individuals have the capacity or space for traditional compost heap, CPF considered the concept of an urbanized composting unit. Thus, CPF sought JEF SGP funding to educate individuals in urbanized composting techniques, utilize urban spaces through the creation of an urbanized composting unit, and to incentivize composting. As can be seen on the solution tray, it was posited that the proper disposal of organic waste through an urbanized composting unit could partially address climate change given the reduced methane gas generation, increase the use of organic fertilizer, addressing the fact that organic waste is a lost resource and can result in less diseases, especially from illegal dumping. Though there are so many benefits to a traditional compost heap, it should be noted that partially sealed units may be beneficial to some individuals, though small organisms may not always be involved as compared to that of an open-air heap. The units may also allow for controlled moisture content and may be more compact, which is useful for small spaces and has a convenience factor. In noting that there were very limited options for those who wish to have a compost tumbler locally, CPAP developed a tumbler that was compact, easy to use through a tumbling action, and will be kid friendly and will deter rodents and have odor control. In executing the funded project for a 5-month period, a user manual and instructional videos were developed. Let us now delve into the program of evaluation. Via volunteer sampling, 6 households, as distributed according to this map, utilized 12 tumblers. That is, each household had 2 tumblers, so that when one was filled, the other could be utilized. On average, the participating household contained 3 persons, and the main user ranged in age from 36 to 60 years. There were equal male and female participants, and though there was limited and no experience in container composting, all participants had a high interest and or experience in compost heaps. Prior to the April to August 2021 testing period, all participants were invited to a Zoom training on composting. For the operation, all participants were provided with a covered bucket and were advised to keep this in the kitchen so that they could collect crushed egg shells, leftover food, as well as vegetable peels. No meat or bones were to be added. Once adequately filled, the greens were to be weighed. Based on this, browns were to be utilized in a 1:2 ratio by volume. So for every bucket of greens, 1 to 2 buckets of browns were to be utilized. Sawdust was provided to the participants for this purpose. Leaves and hard grasses were not suitable due to the lengthy time for decomposition. Following the addition of the greens and browns, participants were to add water if necessary. So if soups or frozen items are utilized, no additional water was needed. The tumbler was to then be closed and tumbled 3 to 5 times. This process continued until the fill line of the tumbler was reached. Subsequent to this, participants were required to monitor parameters on a weekly basis, and these included temperature, humidity, odors, color changes, and general operation. They were required to tumble and open the unit every 2 to 3 days, as well as open the leachate drain at the bottom of the tumbler when the contents appeared to be too moist. The contents of the tumbler were considered to be complete or having reached compost maturity when there was a drop in volume, a sweet, earthy smell, a color change to brown or black, a certain particle size, and pH rating. And upon completion or compost maturity, a pH rating was taken, the materials were weighed, and this is referred to as a wet compost. The compost was dried, and then a final weight recording occurred. We are extremely grateful that participants were able to provide feedback and basically help us develop the tumbler. And so here we see some of the individuals who participated in the process, and these photos represent some of the items that are distributed to the participants, including compost sifters, scale, hydrometer for humidity and temperature testing, sawdust, and bucket. The time taken to fill the units were highly variable, ranging from 1 day to 42 days. In the cases of the 1 day, there were family gatherings. But on average, based on the 12 units, it took about 17 days to fill 1 unit, subsequent to which it took between 21 to 100 days for compost maturity, averaging 60 days. It should be noted that in some cases, such as in Unit 3, it appeared that the contents of the unit went dormant, whereas in the case of Unit 8, there was a water logging problem. And so really, when there were issues, this prolonged the time for compost maturity. And this certainly helped us to develop the troubleshooting section of our user manual. On average, therefore, based on the 12 units, the time frame for 1 unit from beginning to end was about 77 days, split into 17 days to fill and 60 days to generate compost. The efficacy findings are extremely important. Now, theoretically, the greens captured during this project would have ultimately ended up in the landfill. And so, for the time period of the project, utilizing the 12 units, a total of 93.9 kilograms of organic waste was disrupted or diverted from entering that waste stream. This came up to an average 7.83 kilograms per unit. This corresponding weight of browns came up to 2.93 kilograms, noting that this was the corresponding figure to the 1:2 volume of browns to green, which is on estimate the 30 parts nitrogen to 1 part carbon, because each material does have its own nitrogen carbon ratio. For capacity of the unit, on average, there was a 10.75 kilogram capacity, though according to range it went up to 16.8 kilograms. Now, very importantly, and what I'm sure we're all excited about, is the compost output. In terms of wet compost, there was an average of 8.29 kilograms of compost per unit. Now, with further testing and a larger data set, large-scale disruptions can be calculated. And this is a per household calculations. So if we were to use these figures, we can say that 7.83 kilograms of organic waste was disrupted during a 77-day period, and this is just for one unit, resulting in a disruption of 31.12 kilograms per year. However, if one household had several units in that, when one unit was filled and the compost was maturing, they could begin to use another unit per household. They would be able to disrupt 168 kilograms of organic waste per year. Noting that according to that 2010 study, Trinidad and Tobago generates about 189,000 tons of organic waste per year, this would make quite a dent in removing a segment of the organic waste that is sent to the landfill. For the parameters, all units recorded over 75% for humidity, which is quite high, and this was likely due to respiration by microorganisms and limited drainage, noting that moisture would have occurred from excess additions of water, low amounts of raw materials, and the emergence of water from moisture-rich foodstuff. So it is really recommended that a leachate drain be used. However, these high humidity readings may have constrained the temperatures, noting that in terms of the surface readings, there was a range between 28 degrees Celsius and 36.2 degrees Celsius. We did have some limited monitoring of the internal temperatures through the use of a compost thermometer, and this resulted in a range of 37 degrees Celsius to 43 degrees Celsius, which is a much better range as it enters active composting. However, we were limited by COVID-19 restrictions in terms of visiting the participants frequently to take internal readings. Two households experienced offensive scents, and through observation, this is highly tied to water logging and not enough additions of raw materials, and it would have represented possible shifts from aerobic to anaerobic composting. It should be noted that this scale ranged from 1 to 5 on a perception scale. Here are some photos of the finished compost. This is one that came straight out of the tumbler and was not yet crushed or sifted. So you can actually see an eggshell here that really ideally should have been powderized or crushed before it went in. However, after use of the compost sifters, look at this wonderful end product we have here with a nice particle size and a lovely color. Participants were actually very happy for the compost, and one used it for a plant, the other used it for seedlings, and just yesterday another participant sent us photos of some tomatoes that they grew in the compost. So it indeed proved to be quite beneficial. Okay, so what's next for the tumbler? CPF was proud to launch Captain Turner, the household compost tumbler, our hero, in September 2021. This flyer showcases some of the features, such as the tumbler is compact and lightweight and locally made, and benefits such as it is less manually intensive than traditional composting. CPF also opened social media accounts on Instagram and Facebook under the social media handles of Captain Turner for persons to find and learn more about the product. Now, it should be noted, the product is priced at between 500 to 600 TT, and in Trinidad and Tobago, the average cost of a 45 kilogram bag of compost is about 60 to 75 TT. And so Captain Turner offers its owner the ability to produce compost indefinitely for less than the cost of 10 bags of compost. So there's a value added proposition to customers, because when they purchase a Captain Turner, they support a local NGO and thus further projects in the environmental arena. Moreover, after sales support is actually a feature of this product. Further research is recommended to gain additional data, and it is also recommended that public education campaigns occur so that persons can realize that when they dispose of organic waste, they are almost throwing money down the drain. It is recommended the tumbler be used as both an educational and waste management tool, and very, very highly recommended and underscored that there should be the expansion and replication of the use of the tumbler in communities on a large-scale basis. In conclusion, the findings reveal that the tumbler can produce mature compost within 60 days or much less in ideal conditions, which is quite reasonable given the time frame required for passive compost use. It was also noted that the produced compost was useful for participants who used it for their plants and seedlings. It should be noted that the tumbler was made available publicly with notes and solutions for potential challenges based on the beta testing. To conclude, it can be said that the tumbler is an effective method of reducing household organic waste and can culminate in a significant disruption of organic waste directed to landfills. A shift in behavior from dumping organic waste to the utility of a waste management tool, such as the urbanized composting unit, henceforth known as Captain Turner, may serve to promote sound agricultural practices and improve environmental and human health. I thank you very much for your attention and hope to see you soon on our social media pages. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Indar, for your presentation. That's very interesting stuff. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Ms. Yashoda Singh. Yashoda is a community change agent and social entrepreneur who has been inspired to join the Cashew Gardens Community Council in order to effect new positive change and evolve her community in becoming a model for others. She has leveraged her undergraduate degree and over 10 years experience in marketing towards the organisation's many successful initiatives. Her passion for the environment empowered her to embark on a journey with fellow women with unrelenting passion for empowering people. And her most promising work yet are the Cashew Gardens Community Recycling Programme, the Compost and Community Climate Smart Garden, amongst others. She believes that to effect change in the world, it must start with a community level and the needs to gain the active engagement of our youth. She embodies a philosophy that we all need to pray, inspire, and encourage resourcefulness and imagination if we are to enjoy a future and healthy planet. Ms. Singh, it's now time for your presentation.
My name is Yashoda Singh, and I am one of the directors of the Cashew Gardens Community Council. I am pleased to present this paper entitled Cashew Gardens, a Model Community, a case study of community waste management in Trinidad and Tobago. The agenda for this presentation is as follows: a look at the present state of waste management in Trinidad and Tobago, an overview of the Cashew Gardens Community Council, a historical snapshot of the community's recycling and composting programs, data and statistics from both programs, and lastly, the social, economic, and environmental benefits of the CGCC's programs. Trinidad and Tobago is a small island developing state, or SIDS, and waste management is critical for all SIDS due to an average of 2.3 kilograms of municipal solid waste per person, which is 48% higher than the world average. Within SIDS, even though landfilling space is an issue, more than 90% of the municipal waste is recyclable. As such, in 2021, new waste management rules were established by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. The purpose is to improve national waste management, including hazardous and non-hazardous waste, by requiring generators and handlers of waste to apply for and obtain permits prior to carrying out their waste-related activities. The two top waste types in Trinidad and Tobago are organic at 22% and plastics at 20%. Additionally, the National Integrated Waste Management Policy 2014 establishes the plan for managing Trinidad and Tobago's waste in accordance with the hierarchy that minimizes landfilling with an increased focus on the reduction of toxicity and volume of waste through reuse, recycling, and source-separated organic waste management. According to a 2019 report by researchers from the Rochester Institute of Technology, RIT, Trinidad and Tobago discards up to 26,000 tons of PET plastics per year. The Cashew Gardens Community Council is concerned about pollution and ways in which this community can reduce its carbon footprint by sending less recyclable waste to the landfills, in educating the community and endorsing waste management systems that reduce the volume of noxious greenhouse gases emitted into the atmosphere, thus contributing to a cleaner and healthier environment. The goal of this paper is to examine community waste management by looking at the CGCC, a cluster-based case within the local Trinidad and Tobago context, and to assimilate whether the findings lead to a circular economy. Please enjoy a short video on the history of the Cashew Gardens community and some insights into our programs.
Welcome to Cashew Gardens!
Cashew Gardens is a rural community situated in central Trinidad. To keep the cost of the land to a minimum, the community was developed with very basic infrastructure. Our first project was the construction of a community garden, as we recognized that in order to build a sustainable community, we needed a constant source of income. The income from the garden provided the funding that we needed to construct our own community center, which would become our hub for the meeting of the minds for future development.
The Cashew Gardens Recycling Program has been involved in this project for the last 5 years.
Some of our successful initiatives include our community recycling program, our community composting, and our cassava and sweet potato project. As a community, our start was rough. However, through dedication and sheer determination, we were able to rise above our challenges. And although we have a long way to go, we feel empowered to finish the journey now.
My name is Rosalind George, and I'm the team lead for the Cashew Gardens Community Council's recycling program. Cashew Gardens started our very first community-based recycling program in the island of Trinidad in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago in 2016. This is as a result of the amount of plastic pollution that was discovered in our nearby waterways. This contamination of waterways was not unique to our community and has contributed to a history of flooding which hurts our wildlife and gets into our food chain. The recyclables collected by our Cashew Gardens initiative represents a mere 2% of the recyclable material that is generated on our island every year. However, this material, when collected, is baled and shipped to other countries for recycling. This material can be put to valuable use right here in Cashew Gardens, in our country, and in our region. This plastic can be used here to create products that can be a revenue stream and generate employment in our community. We have successfully engaged in collection of plastics and public education and boast a very vibrant community council eager and ready to continue our work. We have received different awards for our work in the area, including a national award from the Environmental Management Authority, and I myself have been included on a national team of women that addressed the United Nations regarding our community initiative. We know that plastic pollution and deforestation has to be addressed by using proper waste management practices and public education.
Welcome, we are the Techies of Innovation, and welcome to a day in the life of a TI. This is our team.
Hi, it's a pleasure to meet you all. So tell me, what do you guys do to support climate change?
Well, we do several programs: water quality testing, recycling, and composting. Here we have our head water quality tester who can tell you more.
Cool. So what do you all test for?
We test oxygen level of alkalinity, stability, temperature, dissolved oxygen, all of which determine if the water quality testing is at a measurable standard.
Okay, I understand. So what else do you all do?
Reduce, reuse, recycle. Come, let us show you. At the front here we have one of our designated bins which we use for recycling.
So why is recycling so important?
It's important because it reduces the amount of non-biodegradable materials in the landfills.
Alright, so what's the procedure to recycle?
All you need to do, separate your plastics from your regular trash, tie your bag, you go to your nearest recycling bin and you just drop it in.
Wow, that's so easy.
It is, but I would love to show you something else.
And what's that?
Our compost heap. Let's take a walk.
Welcome to our magnificent compost heap.
That's just garbage. What's so magnificent about that?
I mean, it may look like garbage, but it's way more complex than that.
How so?
It's a combination of green and brown layers which can be broken down into humus.
Our brown layers are rich in carbon, such as cardboard, shredded paper, and even dry grass. Now, our green layers are rich in nitrogen, such as kitchen waste and even manure. This process produces a rich soil in order to fertilize our crops.
All that? I didn't even realize it's all that.
Not all. We use the soil to fertilize the crops in our garden, so we benefit from composting.
That's amazing. All of this really makes sense.
Yes, every process is unique and has an important role in making a zero waste economy.
The Cashew Gardens Community Recycling Program has successfully diverted plastic, cans, glass, and Tetra Paks from entering our landfills, with over 5 tons being recorded from February to July 2021. According to our national recycling policy, these 4 waste types account for almost 40% of the waste that goes to our landfills. By utilizing social media tools such as WhatsApp and Facebook, the Cashew Gardens Community Council was able to successfully engage 16 households in sorting their organic waste at the household level. The funding for the project ended in December 2020, but the CGCC continued with the aid of volunteers. The volunteers consisted of youths and adults, with the former being between the ages 11 to 22. Female volunteers were significantly higher at 70%. In 2021, the project grew to over 20 households and collected an average of 490 kilograms of organic waste for a period of 9 months, from October 2020 to June 2021. This yielded compost material for use in gardening of approximately 66 kilograms. The CGCC is contributing to the reduction of this type of waste in the landfills. The evidence has shown that a combination of community recycling and composting has contributed to a 1% reduction of Cashew Gardens waste in landfills. Subsequently, the replication of this project in other communities can result in a measurable reduction of recyclable waste in landfills. As I said, land for landfilling is limited, and hence this is an important contribution for this reason as well. Other economic benefits are saving in terms of organic waste being used in the garden and saving on average $1,500 USD per year, and also producing compost for sale. The environmental benefits include growing the community recycling program by 90% in 2021, with over 5 tons of recyclables being diverted from landfills, over 490 kilograms of organic waste collected from 20 households by the Cashew Gardens community and being prevented from ending up in landfills, participation in over 20 environmental events, over 8 beach and river cleanups, and mango tree planting. The social benefits oversaw an average of 10 educational and awareness sessions at schools and other organizations throughout the country. Other social benefits include the CGCC's participation in the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women in the year 2018 and 2019 and sharing our recycling projects, creating an avenue for social sharing at the Homework and Activity Center and Community Climate Smart Garden, with 10 women and 20 youths consistently volunteering. By creating jobs for more than 10 persons in the community and more jobs expected as the projects expand, the overall trend in terms of total recyclables collected indicate that there is an increase in the amount of recyclables collected per month. This is evidence that there is a change in behavior within the community since they are not putting their recyclables in general waste and are instead sending them to be recycled. There is strong evidence that this change in behavior was influenced by the youths. In summary, the recycling programs initiated by the Cashew Gardens Community Council are examples of key waste management systems that are needed in every community in Trinidad and Tobago, and by extension, the Caribbean. There are opportunities for profitable activities in recyclables, both inorganic and organic waste, which can directly reduce the amount of waste for disposal, save space in landfills, and conserve natural resources. These two areas, plastic pollution and greenhouse gases in landfills, are two major environmental issues locally. The end. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Singh, for your presentation. I would like to introduce our third speaker, Ms. Jelicia Barrett. Jelicia Barrett is a student of the University of West Indies in Jamaica. She's pursuing a Master of Science degree in Integrated Urban and Rural Environmental Management. She also has a bachelor's degree in Business Administration from the University of Technology in Jamaica. In 2016, she received international training in Sustainable Solid Waste Management in Okinawa, Japan. This was sponsored by the Japan International Cooperation Agency, and she currently works with Jamaica's waste management industry, where she provides auditing services in the areas of finance, operations, and compliance. Ms. Barrett, it's now time for your presentation.
Good day, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today presenting at the CWWA's 30th Annual Conference. Before I begin my presentation, let me introduce myself. My name is Jelicia Barrett, a final year MSc student in the program Integrated Urban and Rural Environmental Management at the University of the West Indies, Mona, Jamaica. This presentation will highlight the current state of waste management in Jamaica, the solid waste management hierarchy, common composting method, with a focus on the viability of adopting composting as a waste management solution within the Vineyard Town community. Solid waste is managed by the National Solid Waste Management Authority, otherwise referred to as the NSWMA. The National Environment and Planning Agency, NEPA, has an oversight role to the authority. One way in which this oversight role is executed is through the granting of environmental permits and license for the establishment and operation of disposal facilities. Within Jamaica, solid waste generation has increased over the years. One of the factors impacting this is population growth. It has also been observed that 70% of the solid waste generated in the country is organic in character. This was disclosed from waste characterization study conducted and highlighted in the NEPA 2013 State of the Environment report. Another factor impacting waste management in the country is the limited financial resources to carry out waste management in Jamaica. We realize, as highlighted from the annual report 2018-2019, that there was a 2.9 billion shortfall in the amount that is required to carry out public cleansing activities. As a result of this, it has been observed that inadequate and infrequent garbage collection within the country. There is also improper disposal of solid waste, such as the burning of garbage or the disposal in gullies. And the annual International Coastal Cleanup Day, the amount of garbage being collected is evidence of this improper disposal of garbage. There is also an increase in vector-borne diseases. In 2019, there was an outbreak in dengue, which fueled the removal of bulky waste project, which would see bulky waste being removed by the NSWMA in collaboration with the Ministry of Health and Wellness from spaces so as to reduce mosquito breeding sites. Also, there's a lack of garbage separation at the household level. The aim of the research conducted was to determine the potential viability of composting as a waste reduction strategy within the Vineyard Town community in Jamaica. The objectives of this research was to assess the level of awareness about composting among residents of the Vineyard Town community, to assess the receptiveness of residents to separate their household generated organic waste, as well as to determine the most suitable approach towards composting for implementation in the Vineyard Town community. The waste management hierarchy highlights the waste management options from the most preferred to the least preferred. As shown in this diagram, source reduction and reuse is at the highest level of preference. This means reduction of waste where you actually reduce the generation of waste. Reuse will also reduce the amount of waste to be collected and disposed of because it is being reused. This is followed by recycling and composting. Now, recycling would normally be for inorganic waste, while composting would be for organic waste. Energy recovery is the other one in the spectrum of this hierarchy, which is followed by the least preferred, which is treatment and disposal. As shown in the previous slide, composting is highly ranked in the waste management hierarchy. One may ask the question, what is composting? Composting may be defined as the biological degradation of the organic components of waste under controlled conditions to produce a stable end product called compost. Now, this compost can be used as a soil enhancer, a soil conditioner as well, and therefore can be used in agriculture as well as in home gardening. There are several composting methods. These include static pile, in-vessel composting, and in-vessel composting is where you use a container, any form of container, to carry out composting. There's also windrows, and this is where you have like piles, but the piles are separated in rows. There's also vermicomposting, and vermicomposting is where the addition of earthworms are made to the compost in order to aid in the decomposition process. This diagram here conceptualizes the relationship between composting and achieving sustainable solid waste management. Composting is identified as the independent variable, while sustainable solid waste management is the dependent variable. In order to compost, there must be constants such as organic waste generation and separation. Because this is integral to the composting process, These factors must be controlled. According to literature reviews conducted within this research, intervening factors that affects the relationship between composting and the ability to achieve sustainable solid waste management includes the presiding laws and regulation, the waste generation rate, the resource requirements, compost design and technology selected, the knowledge and technical skills of the persons that will be carrying out the composting operation, the land space availability, and also non-separation of garbage. Now, when we look at the dimensions to sustainable solid waste management, we see environmental, economic, political, and social. Within the environmental perspective, we're seeing preservation and conservation of natural resources as a core factor within this dimension. Within the economic dimension to sustainability, once this is achieved, then you will see the possibilities of increasing composting business opportunities. There will also be a reduction in transportation costs related to carrying out waste management within the country. As a governance perspective, regulation and policies, plans and programs will be necessary to achieve sustainable solid waste management. Within the social dimension, this will promote good health and well-being, as well as enhance community-based waste management programs. The focus of this research is the Vineyard Town community, as shown on this map, located within the parish of Kingston and St. Andrew within Jamaica. This research utilized a mixed method approach to include the use of surveys and interviews. Survey instruments of a questionnaire was distributed to 100 residents within the Vineyard Town community. The population was divided into substrata, which was detached housing and gated complexes. Within the gated complexes, there are apartments and there are also detached houses. In terms of the interviews were conducted with representatives from the NSWMA, NEPA, as well as private composting company, EcoWells Limited. The map shown here highlights the distance of the Vineyard Town community to the Riverton landfill, which is approximately 10 kilometers. Several findings emerged from this research, which include a low level of awareness on composting among residents within the Vineyard Town community. Despite 73% of residents having heard of the term composting, only 10% was very knowledgeable on the topic. However, residents were asked whether or not they would be willing to separate and compost their organic waste, and the findings revealed that 89% of residents were willing to do so. In terms of age and the willingness to compost, residents within the age group of 30 to 64 were found to be more likely to separate their household generated organic waste in order to participate in composting. The research also indicated that the most preferred approach to composting is residential composting, that is, composting at the household level, where 59% of the respondents indicated such. The results also indicated that the most preferred composting system for establishment in the Vineyard Town community is containerized investor composting with low investment requirement. In terms of challenges, the NSWMA highlighted limited funding as their major challenge. In terms of the residents within the Vineyard Town community, limited knowledge, time, and space were the major challenges identified. Opportunities identified within the research results are reduced garbage collection and transportation costs, extended useful life of disposal sites, increased access and availability of food, less reliance on chemical fertilizers, and income generating capacity of compost. Based on the results, a strategic and sustained public education efforts would significantly help to achieve sustainable solid waste management. Considering the fact that residents within the Vineyard Town community have a low level of awareness on composting, however, are willing to separate and compost their organic waste, shows an opportunity for the NSWMA to embark on a more strategic and sustained public education effort, and also targeting the group that will be more likely to embark on composting. Public-private partnership would also be useful considering the resource constraints currently being faced by the NSWMA. The provision of incentives to boost participation could also be utilized to encourage citizens to partake in composting. Developing composting regulation and policy is also important, considering the fact that Jamaica does not have a current regulation stipulating household separation of waste. Also, to promote the use of time-efficient and cost-effective composting method would also boost the take-up of composting within the Vineyard Town community. This research will significantly enhance environmental preservation and conservation efforts, as well as reduce public health and safety risk. The information from this study can also be used to inform waste management plans, policies, and programs, which would better position Jamaica to achieve its Vision 2030 National Development Plan, and by extension, achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, in particular, Goal 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities. Based on the research findings, it can be concluded that composting is a viable waste reduction strategy for implementation within the Vineyard Town community. This could significantly contribute to sustainable urban waste management within Jamaica. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Barrett, for your presentation. We'll now move on to the Q&A session. Everyone can take part in this. If you have any questions, please submit them via text on Hoover. Unfortunately, Ms. Indar couldn't attend today's session, but her co-author, Mr. Renaldo Lewis, is here to answer questions you might have on that paper. Please make sure you include the name of the speaker that the question's being addressed to, and we'll do our best to answer all the questions. But if we run out of time, you can always find the speaker's contact information on the speaker's page on Hoover. So without further ado, we'll start the Q&A. We have the first question is addressed to the first two speakers. So in this case, it'll be Mr. Renaldo Lewis and Ms. Yashoda Singh. We'll take each in turn. But this question is, can you elaborate on the challenges faced when you were trying to convince people to take on composting in the case of Captain Turner and recycling in the case of Cashew Gardens? So could I direct that question firstly to Mr. Renaldo Lewis with respect to Captain Turner?
Good day, everyone. Renaldo Lewis here. So in response to the question, it was really identified by the last presentation, the lack of knowledge and education. So composting is something that traditionally done in the Caribbean. However, without the scientific backing and knowledge by the majority of people that would have practiced it in the past. So the newer generation who are more urbanized and more less connected to the earth, they are not really aware of the process, right? Getting caught up in modern life. So to encourage persons to get back involved in composting, as the third presenter identified, there's really a need for public education and public education drive. At the end of my answer.
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting point that the next generation, we've lost the knowledge of what composting is. It seems fairly simple, but it's interesting that message needs to be passed on. In terms of what challenges were faced with Cashew Gardens and getting people to take on this composting challenge, how was that dealt with, Ms. Singh?
Well, I think the person, are you hearing me properly? Hello?
Hello, I can hear you.
Yes. So with respect to the recycling, I think the recycling kind of is the path to the composting, because what we did initially when we did the cleanup effort to get into the recycling, there is some sense of awareness of the solid waste issue, especially as it impacts flooding in Trinidad and Tobago and in our immediate Kapara environment. So the community was actually very much braced to accept something like recycling or just even start at the household level. What we did was make it very convenient for them. So with the donations of bins, we deposited at every street corner we could think of, and which made it so convenient that they just needed to go a few steps from their house and deposit in a bin, which we would then collect and sort. So we just made it so convenient that it was not a bother to them to then sit and do their own waste sorting. Also, the youths, we got the youths involved at the initial stage, and they were the persons to push. They were the persons to get the parents involved. They were the persons to take the responsibility and also even assist us in the voluntary efforts of counting bottles, gathering data, etc. We found that doing outreach and advocacy at preschool levels were also a big impact, because this is recycling is part of the Trinidad and Tobago's school curriculum. So they actually have some part of awareness of recycling, except when they go home, nothing is in place. So we found that at the preschool level, they were all excited. They brought the energy, they brought, the hope for the future. When we started the composting, because most of the households were already recycling, it was just something to add on to their current waste separation. So they were really open to it. We started with a small group of only 16 initially. We have expanded to 20, and we know that currently there are a lot more people who are ready to come on board. But of course, this takes capacity and funding, etc., to manage. So everything currently with the composting is a voluntary effort. So we have to be very careful of how we manage that. Yeah, so I hope that kind of answers that question.
Okay, thank you very much. So it's kind of awareness being the key here, isn't it? And using that awareness to sort of generate participation. But we've got another question, and this question is to Miss Barrett, and the question is, what would you like to see as your next steps to your research?
Good day.
Good day.
Thanks for that question. Okay, so in terms of the research, it focused on urban waste management, and so an extension into a comparison between urban and rural would be a good extension to this research. Additionally, the research that was conducted in the Vineyard Town community there could be an addition to that in terms of implementing interventions and seeing how best this intervention is taken on by residents within the community, so as to see how further this could be utilized in other communities across Jamaica.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We have another question for Miss Yashoda Singh, and it's have any other communities reached out to you trying to emulate your experience in Cashew Gardens?
Definitely. There are many other communities who would want to model, and we would want to actually have communities join us in this effort. What we found there, for instance, in our outreach where we did with preschools in Point Fortin, in areas outside of our immediate environment, we partnered with the eye care program, the EMA's eye care program, so that there can be bins easily accessible. So schools, religious organizations, etc. Once we did the outreach, we partnered with the eye care program so that the bins could be placed within easy reach of their community. But to say to model something specific like ours, that has not been implemented as yet. So as far as I'm aware, we're the only community who's doing it in such a holistic manner. And our program is currently funded by the Green Fund, so we can actually have drivers collect this on a weekly basis. However, with the eye care program, this is done at maybe a collection point, whereas we make it at our street level. So while there are communities who would be interested to do something like this, it's really, processes and systems have to be placed in order to implement this. Although we are expanding into more communities where we are, so we started with one community, we are at 4 communities, and we are hoping to expand to 8 communities, which covers a large percentage of Shoguna's environment. So, we hope to have this replicated and, of course, make it a national program.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. I have another question for Mr. Lewis. It's a fairly simple one, but how are the sales doing for Captain Turner?
All right, good question. Oh, my camera's on backwards all the time. What are you
So it's okay. It's fine. It's fine. We can hear you well.
All right. Yeah. So sales. We launched the product a couple of weeks ago, and as an NGO, this is done primarily voluntarily. So we projected to sell about 15 between September and the end of the year, and we have gotten about 15 orders in the first 2 weeks. So we bypassed our estimations, and so far all good, all well.
Excellent, excellent. And I know when the question was being asked to Miss Barrett, what you're going to do with your next research, and that was kind of looking at the transition from rural to urban. Captain Turner would be a solution in an urban environment.
Yes, that was the main focus. In terms of how the project idea came about is we have been involved in composting traditionally at a community level, teaching people how to do composting in heaps. And I saw other groups coming up doing similar, right? So a day we sat down and we were like, okay, can we think of a different way to tackle this? And that's where we looked at the containerized composting, because now so many people living in urbanized spaces, they don't necessarily have the land space, the backyard, to do traditional type composting. And then because of the hectic schedules that you live, you're looking for more convenient ways.
Okay, we may have just lost Mr. Lewis there. Give him a few seconds to see if the line refreshes. If not, we'll move on to the next question. Can you hear us, Renaldo?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, sorry, you went off just before you closed off. The picture froze and you went silent. We probably missed your last sentence to close out.
I was just saying that was the incentive for us to get into developing this compost tumbler, looking at ways to promote.
As is often the way in these things usually cut out just as the important information is going to be said. I think we probably get the picture there that this could be used in an urban environment, and you know, in those environments that's often where we have the densest populations and the most materials generated. So getting some take up in those urban centres is key. I've got another question here, and this is to Miss Barrett, and it's really looking at your data and the people's willingness to compost and take part. And the question is, why do you think people between 18 to 29 and over 65 were reluctant to compost? So they're the groups at either end.
I lost you in parts of the question. Could you repeat, please?
Yeah, no problem. It's why do you think the people from 18 to 29 or the over 65s were reluctant to separate and compost?
Okay. All right. Based on the findings, persons within the age group of 18 to 29 could be a situation where these individuals and the 65 and older individuals may not be so willing to compost, might not be aware of the benefits of composting and how important it is to the environment. And so, as was highlighted in the findings, awareness as it relates to composting and the benefits of composting was very low. And so if this is enhanced, then there could be more persons willing within these age group to participate in composting.
Sure, good. I think probably the younger generation may or may not have be set up in houses and dwellings with families and things like that. You know, they've got other things on the minds rather than composting, maybe. You know,
Right.
And it's that middle group that kind of forms the core, doesn't it?
Right. There's something that I would like to add, if I may.
Of course.
Right. So within the literature review, it was highlighted for urban composting in India, in Patna, India. They tried out composting at the apartments within apartment complexes, and the areas that were used were the balconies, even the windowsills. And this was considered to be successful, and despite the limited space within this urban community. And so this is something for us within the Caribbean and the SIDS to find ingenious ways of seeing how we can promote composting, even despite the limitations.
Definitely. Thank you very much. I have another question here, and it's to Ms. Yashoda Singh. And the question was, how was social media approached to raise awareness in your project?
Well, for the recycling effort, of course, we shared our continued outreach efforts. This helped us even get more requests by other preschools to come into preschools, into primary schools. We actually covered a few primary schools in our areas. And by sharing our outreach activities on social media, that spread the word about recycling and that a community was doing this at the household level. We then went on to making videos involving the youth in the community who do water testing, and that was also shared via social media. We integrated WhatsApp, created WhatsApp groups, did a trainer model, all utilizing the Zoom. When the pandemic hit, we had to pause our outreach activities, unfortunately, and social media really gave us a way of, communicating and interacting with our community and external communities and sharing all that we do at the community level. So, it really is a big part of our marketing and outreach program.
Excellent, thank you. I've got a question from myself really, and this is to Mr. Lewis. The use of the tumbler or the composting process does need that brown fraction, doesn't it, as well as the green. And I was wondering that in your study, did you incorporate sort of waste paper, cardboard, those sorts of recyclables within the tumbler as the brown fraction?
Right. So because we try to keep it consistent among the 6 households that tested, we provided them initially with sawdust mix. So you get majority of the material was sawdust and some wood shaving to prevent too much clumping with just the pure sawdust. The thing is, over the period of time, again, we're doing this in the pandemic is different. It was difficult for us to go visit frequently. Some of the testers ran out of brown material and they had to use what was available to them. So in some instances, some of them did use like paper, shredded paper, cardboard, and so, but it wasn't something that we provided initially in the test.
Okay, yeah, because that's, we're talking a lot about composting here, but that's something that can be overlooked, isn't it? That the same process can be used to take care to reuse some of those waste paper and card as well.
Yeah.
Okay. If there are any more questions on that might be it for the time being. Like I said, if anyone's got any more questions and we're out of time now, they can still be posed to the speakers. The contact information is on the Hoover website. So if something comes up that you wish you asked, or you want to ask something differently or follow on, you can contact those persons. I'm sure they'll be glad to respond. Okay, I think at this point the session's come to an end. I really do hope that you enjoyed it. We've looked at a good mix really there, really focusing on the organic fraction and composting, both in terms of its the means in which we can do it, both in an urban and rural setting. People's attitudes to this, so research on people's opinions, and it was interesting to understand, what those groups are, the ones that would like to take part, and those that have less knowledge, maybe the younger generation, maybe have lost knowledge in composting, particularly as people have moved from rural to urban centres. But I think even though some of these projects may seem small in their application, we're working at a community level here. What I think is that driving a policy and getting change on the larger scale, that does really come from the community. It's sometimes hard to get our leaders on board to direct policy at national level, but if we can show success, real success at the community level and how it can be done, these schemes can demonstrate that pathway and change policy, influence policy, and ultimately get where we want to be, which is diverting these materials away from the landfill. So, like I say, if you've got any additional questions, reach out to the speakers. And finally, I would encourage you to go and visit the virtual exhibitors. Their booths are on the website, and you can learn about them and what they can offer and how they could help you. So, on behalf of the conference, Caribbean Water and Wastewater Association, Water Authority Cayman, and my Department of Environmental Health, Cayman Islands Government, I'd like to thank you for your attendance. I'm glad you joined us, and take care and have a great day.